You are listening to an After Dinner Conversation magazine podcast. After Dinner Conversation believes humanity is improved by ethics and morals grounded in philosophical truth, and that truth is discovered through intentional reflection and respectful debate. In order to facilitate this process, we have created a growing series of print books, a monthly short story magazine, and 2 different podcasts. This podcast, Philosophy Ethics Short Story Audiobooks, provides audiobook recordings of stories that have appeared in our magazine. And our companion podcast, Philosophy Ethics Short Story Discussions, is where we discuss the ethics of the choices made in the stories as a way to model the kinds of discussions we hope you're having about these readings with friends, family, or students. We would love it if you went over to check it out. I'm Roberta, your narrator and story editor at After Dinner Conversation Publishing. Thank you for spending your time listening to our podcast and for reading the magazine. Thank you for supporting us through your magazine subscriptions and through patreon.com/afterdinnerconversation. And of course, if you enjoy this audiobook reading, please subscribe to our podcast, share it on social media, and suggest it to friends. Today's story is The Perfect Daughter, written by Fryderyk Sylla and published in our July 2021 magazine. The Perfect Daughter by Fryderyk Sylla. Standing in a handstand, Jane arched her back and lowered her feet toward the head. Scorpion pose. She saw herself in the mirror, balancing in this challenging position. It was close to perfection, and she felt sick at the sight of it. From the loudspeaker played the soft sound of Indian music. Lighted incense sticks were spreading the suffocating aromas of sandalwood and saffron. The yoga instructor strolled between the students, trying the pose. Jane came back onto her feet and rolled up the mat. Tears filled her eyes, but she kept them from pouring out with an effort of will. The instructor looked at her. "I'm sorry," she said, and left the room. In the locker room, she sat down on the bench and hid her face in her palms. She has always loved yoga. After classes, she felt renewed and full of life. And now even yoga lost its colors. Jane changed into a collar shirt, jacket, and skirt, and threw her high heels into the bag, opting for sneakers. She made sure not to even glance at the mirror that hung on the wall. At the front desk sat a lovely girl who clearly had a crush on Jane. During their last conversation, she called her extremely attractive and asked a few suggestive questions. Jane appreciated such interest. She smiled kindly at the girl, ignoring the voice in her head saying that it too was now empty. They are sure to have the conversation, but not today. When Jane exited the studio, the artificial intelligence in her implant realized that it was time to go home, and so it drove up a capsule transport through a lit street. Jane climbed in, tossed her bag on the floor, and collapsed onto the plush couch. Out of the air vents came out a pine scent. The capsule lurched forward with the hum of an electric motor. "Phone," Jane said. A hologram of incoming calls with a blinking mute icon appeared in the center of the capsule. It's been 4 hours since her mom last called. She felt a pang in the heart. Was she expecting anything else? It was obvious that after making dozens of such attempts, Mom would give up at some point. Mail. The hologram changed shape now, showing 32 unread messages. Jane scolded herself. She knew what was waiting for her there, but she had to show herself the full extent of her neglect. Her law firm had been preparing for indictments for the International Court of Justice. 2 weeks left to the first hearing. Meditation with guidance. The capsule's windows darkened, the couch transformed into a flat surface, and a soft voice of a guide came from the speakers. Jane sat down in the lotus pose, straightened her back, and took a deep breath through her nose. She closed her eyes as she exhaled. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and Bad thoughts still screamed. 3 days ago, over dinner, her mom blurted out that Jane was genetically designed. Inhale and exhale. Guide's voice brought her back to the breath. 10 minutes later, she arrived in front of her apartment building. Meditation did not work. The door opened and the chill of the night air wrapped around Jane. When she exited, the capsule drove off to be of use to someone else. Hey, there were 3 black limousines in front of the building with a squad of black coats which guarded the area around them. Jane called them so since she was 6. "Hello, Tim," she waved. "Earl, nice to see you." The tall bodyguards bowed, smiling. "Nice to see you too, miss," Earl said. "He's waiting upstairs?" Earl confirmed. Jane entered the apartment building and greeted the porter and moved to the elevator, which, without pressing a button, moved to the 14th floor. A tall man in a suit stood in front of her apartment, holding a large Christmas tree. "This year I bought it early," he said with a smile. Jane's hands tightened on the bag. Her body felt hot. She walked over to him. "I will not be apologizing," he said. She nodded, and then she allowed the door to the apartment to open. Lights flashed and lit the spacious living room. Inside, large plants adorned the room's corners, photos of friends stood on gray dressers, and posters from rock concerts hung on the walls. Jane took off her shoes as she walked barefoot across the heated floor. Today the apartment smelled of seaside summer. The holographic projection turned on and the evening news announcer sounded in the room. "Turn off," she commanded. Her dad leaned the Christmas tree against the large windows that overlooked the flickering lights of the night city, and he went to look for a stand. Jane went into the open kitchen and poured wine into glasses. "This time I'll help with decorating, too," he said, carrying the boxes under his arms. Jane looked at him. Dad took off his shoes and jacket, then rolled up the sleeves of his shirt. "You don't know how," she said. "Oh, come on. How hard can it be?" Dad put the Christmas tree in a stand and placed it close to the couch. He stepped back and looked. "What do you think?" he said. "A tad bit to the right." "To the left." He moved the Christmas tree and judged again the placing. "Perfect." He smiled and started opening boxes of decorations. "I'll call her tomorrow." He stopped and looked at her. "I'm only here for you." Jane didn't answer. Dad held out his hand for the glass. She handed it to him. "Good." He drank his wine and reached into the box for a pink bauble. "We'll start with my favorite." "It starts with the lights." Dad raised his eyebrows, but after a while he put down the bauble and reached for the lights. He started from the top. "Weren't you afraid they'd catch you?" she asked. "It was legal for us." "What?" Dad wrapped the lights around the branches and then pressed the plug into the socket. The Christmas tree flickered with a dozen colors. "Look how nice it is. I told you, it isn't that hard." Jane threw her glass, making it splatter with a bang on the wall. Dad fell silent and looked at the dripping burgundy stain. The little robot came out of the small compartment and started cleaning. "I should have said legal," Dad said, "because the law is clear on that. Anyone, be it a scientist or parent, who manipulates genes in non-medical cases goes to jail. Policy of zero tolerance. But the law does not apply to everyone. There is a group of rich and powerful who can do anything, and they monopolized genetic designing. They proclaim lofty slogans about the morality and sanctity of human life to deceive society. They use the law to prevent others from using it. Thanks to this, they are the only ones who have access to the technology, and are the only ones who are now free from the tyranny of biology." Jane grimaced. She had heard this rumor once. She felt sick again. "They justify it by the efficiency of resources use," he continued. "The best are born in homes of already the best, and thus they get the best conditions to become the best versions of themselves. Later, the rest of society benefits from it because those individuals lead us all, creating a better world." "You see me like that too, as something that is supposed to be the best." "No, I just wanted to meet you." Jane was baffled and did not know what to say to that. Tears filled her eyes again, and she barely managed to keep them from pouring out. Dad went into the kitchen and poured the wine into a clean glass and handed it to her. "Now the chains," she murmured. He nodded and started putting them on. Pale Jane drank the wine. She was the result of the conspiracy of the rich and powerful against the rest of society. 2 tears ran down her cheeks. "Tell me how you feel," Dad said, adjusting the branch that was hooked to the chain. Jane snapped out of her thoughts. "I feel—" She didn't finish, hiding in her glass and drinking. "Hey, are you familiar with the problem of evil?" "Yes." I am a god.
Jane blinked.
What? If a god is all good and all powerful, why does he allow evil to exist?
He said.
Why, as a creator, doesn't he create the best version of this world? Shouldn't we blame him for it?
Dad reached for his glass and drank from it.
When 30 years ago I was offered this procedure, I also became a creator. The enormous responsibility fell on me. If I did not maximize you, I would allow evil to exist, because I would consciously create a life worse than it could be. I had to make that choice, just like I would have to cure you of whatever disease you had. Diseases are different. Really?
He raised his eyebrow.
Why do we treat them? Why do we care about our health? Isn't it because diseases negatively affect the quality of our lives? But there are also other things that do that. And there are also things that make life easy and beautiful. Look at the world and the privileges that people have. Look at what masses dream about. We want to be attractive and dance at the ball with Prince Charming. We want to be geniuses who are changing the world for the better. Those things are more valuable than some illnesses are unpleasant. How many people would choose the life of Stephen Hawking over theirs? Healthy ones. What about character traits? Does high conscientiousness not help more than hemochromatosis hurts? Does high agreeableness not allow for creating beautiful relationships, which are the foundations of happiness? The difference between the diseases and other traits is an illusion. Only impact on one's life matters. But can't you see? Can't you see what you've done to me? You robbed me. How am I supposed to live right now? Today, while practicing yoga, I felt sick looking at myself because I'm awesome at it, and I barely train it. And now I know it's only because you designed me that way. How can I feel proud of anything that I've accomplished? My PhD, my career, my marriage? It's all empty now and meaningless. No, it's even worse. It's a scam. You are no different from me.
Jane shivered.
Get out. I'm just like you. Look what I've achieved and look who I am. Maybe nobody designed me. Maybe nobody made me. But instead I won a freaking lottery. I received gifts that allowed me to reach the top of society, and I cannot take responsibility for any of them. Same as you. So if you're a fraud, so am I. And everyone who has achieved anything in life. Get out.
He pursed his lips, turning red.
I am your father. It was my duty to give you the best. I taught you how to write and read myself. It was my gift to create the conditions for you to be the best version of yourself. And I did it to the end.
Jane opened her mouth to scream for the third time, get out, but instead she broke down and cried. Calming down, Dad touched her gently and hugged her.
You weren't supposed to find out.
He kissed her head and stroked it, and Jane pushed him away.
You don't think you did anything wrong. You were happy. I didn't want to threaten that. I live in an illusion. Yes. What if the illusion is the key? What if ignorance is necessary? I knew that the world is ruled by a cold destiny, but now I feel it too.
He hugged her tighter.
I don't see room for delight,
she said.
Where's the adventure? It's like a book that has too positive of a story to be enjoyed. Such knowledge destroys fear. And what if the fear is what allows us to live beautifully? You still don't know your ending.
Jane sniffed and reached for the pink bauble.
I recently thought about becoming a parent. I thought that the time is finally right, but now, no matter what I do, I will be deciding who will my child be. The responsibility fell on me, and there's no escaping it. Before, I was powerless and left to the chaos of nature. And maybe it was easier to live this way.
She crushed the bauble in her hand, injuring herself. Dad turned pale. Blood flowed from the punctured skin, and a few drops fell on the white carpet. Pain and fear. Her heart beat faster. How many tragedies did the real ideal have? How much blindness? Jane looked at her father and waited. She waited for him to say the words. He remained silent. And now for the discussion questions. Number 1. Jane's father argues that as a parent, every advantage he fails to give his child is an evil he allows to exist. Do you agree with this assessment? If so, didn't he have an obligation to give his daughter the best chance of success? 2. Jane says she cannot enjoy her successes because she knows she hasn't earned them due to her genetic improvements. Is this true? 3. Assuming it were legal and safe, would you genetically modify your children to improve them? What if the service were only available to the rich or elite? 4. Jane's father argues that the elite are necessary because they create the advances for the masses. Do you agree? If that's the case, why don't we give the best of us relief, exceptions from taxes, laws, etc., so that they have the greatest opportunity to make improvements to the betterment of society? And 5. Jane's father argues that his accomplishments, too, are based on him winning the genetic lottery. Is there an ethical difference between Jane's good genes, which were programmed, and those of her father? Does hard work really mean nothing in the face of genetics?
What do you think? We've been reading The Perfect Daughter by Fryderyk Sylla, and the discussion continues next week with the story Black or White by Jane Allison. If you enjoyed this story, head over to our companion podcast, After Dinner Conversation Discussions, and listen to our discussions of this and other short stories from our magazine. We want to hear what you think. Let's continue the discussion on our webpage in the comment section or on our Facebook page. Links are in the description. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, stay safe and let's keep the discussion alive.